listening to the Star Wars Delusions of Granular podcast with your hosts, Ron and JP. So JP, I realized that last episode we never really got to why you ended up hating Star Wars.
You know, that's actually true. Looking back on it, I don't think I ever really started. The hate came from an external place, I think. Because looking back on it, I was kind of where you were. I saw Revenge of the Sith, and while I had a better experience than you did, it was still kind of like, okay, well, this is what Star Wars is now. It's kind of a generic action movie type thing that has weird stuff at the end, but like no and all that. And I just thought, okay, well, this is just what it is now. And then as the hate really started coming in, I kind of turned to the dark side over a course of 7 years or so, to the point that when a friend had, the first thing that actually piqued my interest, where I was like, I actually might want to look back at Star Wars again, was when a friend of mine had messaged me and was talking about the Clone Wars. And I vehemently was like, oh my god, the Clone Wars, whatever. Because I honestly thought when they released it theatrically, remember, because before it was on the Cartoon Network, it was a theatrical release, which I thought was just a sin.
Right. Yeah, a movie that's not actually a Star Wars movie, but a cartoon, and it's going to be at the theater. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, greedy George Lucas.
Right.
The neck has gotten greedy and it just wants all it can get.
Right.
And so I really joined in on that bandwagon. And a few years later, circa 2011 or so, 2010, 2011, a friend messaged me at work, and we were talking Star Wars. I mean, it was one of those epic G-chat conversations where we talked for, I was probably billable 5 hours talking nothing but Star Wars.
Sure.
And he got to the point where he was like, well, have you watched Clone Wars? I'm like, nah, it's stupid reboot-looking CG show.
So at this point, we're actually talking about the Clone Wars, the second series.
Yes.
Not the cell-shaded series, but the actual CGI Clone Wars that was
not
movie.
Tartakovsky. But Dave Filoni.
Dave Filoni's The Clone Wars. Why is it not called Dave Filoni's The Clone Wars? Well, we'll get into that later, folks, but we are talking about the CGI version of The Clone Wars, starting with the movie, where we are introduced to a new character to the series, to the saga, a girl by the name of Ahsoka Tano.
Ahsoka Tano!
It's
a satisfying name to say.
So, if you haven't already guessed, folks, this episode is where we get into why we ended up liking Star Wars again, and how it ended up turning us back to hardcore fans of Star Wars and loving everything Star Wars. And that is because of the Clone Wars television series. JP, you got into it before I did.
Yeah, I had gotten into it because I was teased with a little bit of... now, this is a slight spoiler warning, but this is kind of what a friend of a friend had told me. And they said that there was a point where Anakin gets knocked out, meets 3 people who are the living embodiment of the Force.
Oh, right.
And is told that his prophecy is that he will become... He's the son. Like, one is the father, there's a son, there's a daughter, and he will be the new father of the Force.
Is he the new father, or he balances?
Well,
this is the balance.
This is the vague report I was getting.
Okay,
and
all right,
so
got it.
And I immediately was like, "That's not Star Wars," and I was like, but it kind of lodged in my brain and stayed there for about a year before I actually watched it, where I was just like, the audacity, and I kind of vaguely Googled stuff. And then eventually I was like, I just have to see this show. I got to know who these writers are. I think they can write something that ridiculous.
Well, that's the thing. You mentioned something that I think a lot of fans have a problem with the show is they say that's not Star Wars. The whole idea of, as fans, whether we're first generation fans or second generation fans, we have an idea in our head of what Star Wars is. And I think a lot of people, if Star Wars goes beyond that or goes outside of that, people have a problem.
And it's well documented. I mean, it's personal to each person because we each had those toys. We each made our own stories and projected our own personalities in these characters.
Right.
Especially when you get to characters like R2-D2 and Chewbacca who aren't even vocal. You're really informing a lot about these characters.
Sure. So, the people that grew up with the original trilogy, those were the people that first had the problem with the prequels because that wasn't Star Wars to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was no Darth Vader. There was no, you know, the stormtroopers looked different when you finally got to the clones. Even down to John Williams' score, it didn't have the typical themes that we were used to hearing in the movies. So I think that's where some of the backlash came from, and I think that's where some of the backlash still lies with the fandom and the hesitation to get into a show like the Clone Wars because it's not Star Wars. Also, it's a cartoon.
And even more so, it's computer generated.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is almost, I think that is really at the heart of it.
The character models look different, obviously. They're you know, stylized versions of the actors that we know.
They are, yeah.
It's different voices, you know, Ewan McGregor.
For the most part.
Yeah, Ewan McGregor, Hayden Christensen, Samuel Jackson are not doing the voices of their characters.
Well, you know, Hayden Christensen's pretty busy these days.
He is.
Oh,
yes.
low blow.
I think, well, you know, he's having a baby.
Just laughing at the fact that you know this, and that I also knew this.
And I just dated this podcast. Congratulations, Hayden.
Yeah, congratulations, Hayden.
So I think that all of that being said, I think that there's definitely, I would say, a hump to get over.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be a true Star Wars fan and like what has been announced as being
canonified.
A large canon of the saga is the Clone Wars. You know, it's how many episodes is it? It's got to be
over
6
seasons.
episodes.
I mean, 5.5 seasons, rather.
Yeah. Once again, folks, we have not done our research. It's 6 seasons at about 20 to 25 to 26 episodes a season.
Mm-hmm.
20 minutes. So you do the math. That's way longer time spent in the Clone Wars than the movies.
Yeah.
So, like it or not, this is canon, and moving forward as a Star Wars fan, you should accept this.
And what's shocking is how much it informs characters such as like Anakin. I mean, Anakin, when I met him in the prequels, it was, I mean, I think we all kind of had that reaction of just like, wow, he is, first he's a little boy, but then after that, he is the worst. He is the whiniest. He's the worst.
He's a whiny teenager.
But watching Clone Wars made me, I've said it many times, he's the greatest hero who ever lived.
Yeah, right. It makes you like Anakin Skywalker.
And so much of that has to do with those character models.
Sure.
They kind of squared off the jaw a little bit, broadened the shoulders a bit on Hayden.
Right.
And
well, once you get past the fact that the animation style is a little bit stiff, the hair doesn't move, they look a little wooden, but that's the style.
But by season 5, they really had gotten that much better.
Yeah, definitely, there are times when you're watching this that it feels like you're watching live action. If you can suspend your disbelief and realize that, they're flying around on speeder bikes and their hair's not moving, fine, whatever. Enjoy it for what it is.
I think another big stumbling block for people is just the presence of Ahsoka Tano.
Exactly. I was just going to say that. Getting back to Ahsoka Tano. So who is Ahsoka Tano? Ahsoka Tano is the Padawan of Anakin Skywalker.
Yes.
Now, if you haven't seen the Clone Wars, I'm sure what you're saying right now is, wait a minute. Anakin Skywalker had a Padawan. How could that be? It was not mentioned in the movies at all. And that is the brilliance of the Clone Wars, is it tells this whole story between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. And even though the show was canceled and had to be finished, the lost episodes on Netflix, it still tells a complete arc.
Oh, yeah.
And it tells it in a way that you can appreciate the prequels more.
When I watched the entire series, and then I went back and watched the prequels. I watched the whole series and all the movies again, and it's interesting because it really informs how Anakin in Revenge of the Sith is really a man at the end of his rope. It's been a long war, and he's kind of frayed to the edge of just he's lost a lot, and no spoilers yet, but and so when he kills Count Dooku, it feels like you understand why he crossed that boundary.
Oh yeah,
it's
definitely.
not so jarring.
Yes.
So
yeah, folks, the Clone Wars series is basically what we were promised when Obi-Wan Kenobi said to young Luke Skywalker in his house that he fought in the Clone Wars with his father. This is the promise, the fulfillment of that promise.
And I'd like to make a differentiation here because the way we just talked about it, it sounds like we're trying to say that this is the story that George Lucas always meant to tell. He never got around to it, which was how Shadows of the Empire was sold to me as a young kid.
Sure.
And I always think about this. I have to weigh this against every new Star Wars thing I consume now. I remember when I was talking to my dad. I'm probably 11 or 12 at this point. Looking at Shadows of the Empire comics and telling my dad, I'm just like, oh, this is so great. I was like, because this is, this takes place between Empire and Jedi. This explains all these things that George Lucas always meant to, but we never got around to saying it. And da 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 da. And my dad just looked at me and was just like, in a rare impatient moment, and goes, "Seems like he forgot an awful lot of shit." and that was kind of the first crack for me in the whole Star Wars thing, was that like, oh, this might actually have something more to do with money.
Well, it does, but
I would say, and Shadows of the Empire deserves its own podcast, and it'll get it someday. But I would say the differentiation here is that was much more of a marketing test,
yes.
And this is 100% storytelling.
This is 100% storytelling.
I mean, with some toy sales included.
Sure. This was, I think the best way to describe the Clone Wars series is it was born out of love. It was not born out of money. It was born out of love. There was a division, from what I believe, what I've heard is that there was a division of Lucasfilm that basically started this as a pet project, and they had no idea if it was ever going to be released or made into a movie or series. They just were building this, and
I feel like I've heard the same story, and George Lucas kind of saw it and was like, "Oh, this is great," and
great.
Started pumping money into it.
Exactly.
We should release this theatrically.
Nice George Lucas impersonation. I'm not even going to attempt it. So I think that's where the whole idea started from. Is it was a test project that had legs, and it grew into a real thing. And it wasn't based on money, and it wasn't based on marketing. It was just, hey, I wanted to do this, and showed it to George, and he says, yeah, great, let's run with this.
And it's kind of funny, like how much truth is in this? Who knows? I don't really care, actually. I almost prefer speculation at this point. But
we are a podcast built on speculation.
Well, it's funny because my initial gut reaction when he first released it in the theaters was like, what a crock of shit. It's like, this is horrible. But in retrospect, it's like, if that story's true, that is so endearing that he's just like, oh, this is great, guys. We could totally develop this into a feature film.
Well, here's the thing. That movie is not that great.
Yeah,
it's not that great.
I actually haven't gotten through the movie, to be honest.
Another stumbling block of the movie
I'm 2/3.
is the fact that it's not good. So, getting back to Ahsoka Tano. Ahsoka Tano is introduced in the movie, and she is basically given to Anakin Skywalker to be his Padawan, and he's reluctant. He doesn't want to
take a slave.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be a teacher, and the powers that be, Yoda and probably Mace, say no. This will be good for Anakin. He'll learn from being able to teach someone else.
I like how the powers that be is like, probably Mace. If it's negative, it's probably Mace.
Probably Mace. Yeah, Mace is the the source of all things negative in the Force.
Yeah.
Not dark side, just negative. So, anyway, yeah, he was given this Padawan reluctantly, and throughout the movie, she kind of annoys him and the audience, and I guess she's supposed to grow on the audience by the end, but she's still kind of annoying. She calls Anakin Skywalker Sky Guy. And
You really want to get his goat, you call him Little Annie.
yeah,
Everybody knows that.
Right. And it there were certain things that just it didn't feel like Star Wars, but like it ended up like it fits in when you watch the rest of the series, because you realize that Ahsoka Tano, when she's first introduced, is a little girl. So of course she would make up nicknames for people.
Yeah.
And of course she would kind of be annoying, but the brilliance of the series is she grows. She grows as a character. She grows in age
and ability and
in
maturity and
maturity.
I mean, by season 5, you're dealing with she's essentially a Jedi.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we've never
so
really
it's a very
witnessed
natural growth, not unlike Samurai Jack, actually.
Right.
As a character that grows from episode to episode.
Right. But we've never really witnessed that in Star Wars.
Exactly.
Which is...
Well, I mean, except for, Luke growing a beard in the third one, where he gets really, where suddenly he's all black Jedi. And...
Oh, right. Yeah, but
that
we
was so
didn't see
abrupt.
that. Yeah, we didn't see that.
Yeah,
we didn't see this progression of a character actually growing.
And this actually comes back to what we initially were talking about, the idea of what is and what isn't Star Wars. And I think that is something that, watching a progressive, like a television version of where there's continuity and there's you're seeing a day-to-day growth of a character. That's something that a lot of people would say is not Star Wars.
No, that's the beauty of the Clone Wars, is the fact that there's a lot of things in there that you would say that's not Star Wars.
In fact, I think that they put a lot of things in there on purpose to make you have to question that what is and what isn't, because that Clone Wars, to me, even more so than the EU, expanded my belief in what you can do with Star Wars.
Can't be exactly.
Yeah, I mean, Star Wars, I would say at this point is as vast as, say, the Marvel universe.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You could do.
I think that. Yeah, I think we can get back. We can go back to this in a little bit, but I think that the risks that the Clone Wars did, the ups and downs that it took, helps you prepare for, the ups and downs that's going to happen with the saga as it moves forward. Everybody is on board with J.J. Abrams directing Episode 7, and we all think, if you listen to the hype on the internet and the other Star Wars podcasts, everybody is pretty much on board that it's going to be great.
Yeah.
But what if it's not?
And we know that there's always spin-off movies coming off, too.
Right. What if they're not?
Yeah.
Right? There's going to be a lot of fans out there that are going to feel, if it's not, doesn't live up to their expectations, they're going to feel as let down as they felt when they watched Phantom Menace for the first time. And what we're here to say is
stick with it.
Watch the Clone Wars, because the Clone Wars, because it's an episodic tale in 20 minutes, and it's also a cartoon, you can kind of not take it seriously and kind of let it grow on you.
Yes.
And realize that, all of a sudden they're doing things that are outside of what your definition of Star Wars is, and it's working.
Yeah, and what's exactly, and it feels Star Wars. You think it's not, but you're like, I mean, I'm one of the worst about this. You cannot introduce a single new element to Star Wars to me without me having to weigh it against these scales of does this feel authentic? Is this right? How are those pants? Do those pants look Star Wars? I don't know.
Right.
But I mean, Clone Wars passed.
Oh,
big time.
Yeah. One of the challenges that it had to overcome was the fact that it doesn't use a lot of John Williams' score, because John Williams actually owns the score.
That's right.
So they didn't really feel it was necessary to pay John Williams to use the score for a cartoon.
Huh. And it's weird because he actually did grant the usage of it for Tartakovsky's
Right,
Clone
right.
Wars.
But he didn't feel, they didn't feel like they needed to pay, we're getting into the business side of things.
Sure,
but
sure.
they
Well,
didn't
I mean,
feel
it's
like-
all tied together.
Right.
That's one of my favorite behind-the-scenes Clone Wars stories too. Is that the one of the writer of the Mortis story arc, said that when during the first big writers meeting he attended, George Lucas was there and spoke for 20 some odd minutes very eloquently about what the Force truly is, and about what Star Wars is. And I'm paraphrasing here, but what he says is that Star Wars is actually a holy trinity, and there's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And the Father is everything that comes from him in his movies, his 6 movies and his writing, George Lucas.
Okay.
And the Son is the merchandising and the licensing and the toys and the TV shows and all that stuff.
Okay.
And then the Holy Spirit is the fans and the EU and all that stuff. And
Okay.
together, these make a 360 that becomes Star Wars.
All right.
So,
All right. All right.
anyhow. So you can't talk about the show without talking about a little bit of business.
Right. Right. That is Star Wars. All right. So let's kind of move forward a little bit and tell the people out there who are reluctant to try the Clone Wars what else it has to offer.
Well, number one is I don't want to undercut it as just a cartoon and make people think that it's somehow a sanitized Star Wars.
Oh no,
Because
it's not sanitized
in fact,
at all.
Yeah, there's moments of extreme levity that are as light as anything in the Phantom Menace.
Sure.
But then there's things of extreme darkness. There's anything as dark as when Anakin's climbing up at the end of Revenge of the Sith, climbing up
right.
legless and burning.
I want to say it gets a little bit more grislier than that.
Yeah, I mean,
think so.
for
I think-
certain. Yeah.
I think that's one of the
And more
turning
tastefully,
points.
though, at the
Oh,
same
yeah,
point.
definitely,
That's what's weird
definitely,
about it.
yeah.
It's also very tasteful all
Right.
the time.
So let's start with. I know we're all over the map here, but let's start with the characters.
Okay.
So we have all the main characters from the prequels,
Mm-hmm.
but we also have new characters like Ahsoka Tano, who again we see grow throughout the series. Then we have new characters brought into this. We have Asajj Ventress, who actually started with the Tartakovsky series.
I don't even remember this.
Yeah, she was
Wow.
in there, but they brought her back for the CG version of the Clone Wars.
Was she still Dooku's kind of apprentice?
She
Sith
was.
apprentice?
I'm going from memory here. I
Yeah.
think I only watched that once, but
I shouldn't really need to
I
rewatch
believe
that. That
I
deserves
believe
its own
she
podcast.
was Dooku's apprentice, and she is basically not a Sith, not a Jedi, but she knows how to use lightsabers, and she's a bad guy. And she also, without getting into any spoilers, she has a definitive arc in the entire series.
For certain.
She starts in one spot and ends up in another spot that you would not think that she would ever end up in.
In fact, it's an arc that almost perfectly mirrors Ahsoka's.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, she's definitely somebody that is worth watching if you're going to watch the Clone Wars. Then there's one of our favorites,
Hondo.
Ohnaka.
Hondo Ohnaka is I have kind of projected this in my mind that there was a backstory here, where back on Corellian, Han and Lando both really wanted to grow up and be this awesome space pirate Hondo.
Yeah, so
because he's basically like a really good space pirate.
Right. Hondo, first of all, he's a Weequay.
Oh, look
Right.
at you! Okay.
He's a Weequay, so we're tying in the old trilogy with the Clone Wars.
So where have I seen? Have we seen this?
So the
species before?
the Weequays were on Jabba's sail skiffs.
Yes.
The skiffs.
Got it.
Right.
Yep.
They were.
The guy who's guarding him.
Yeah,
right?
there was an action figure for them.
Yep.
And they have kind of like a pruny face.
Scary looking.
Although they're not prune face, that's a completely different character.
right.
But yeah, Hondo is a Weequay, and he basically is a crime lord who
not like a Jabba the Hutt level Crime Lord, but kind
Yeah, a
of like
little bit lower
roving-
level. Yeah, more of, well, he's a space pirate.
Yeah, straight up.
Straight up space pirate.
Yeah.
And I would say that he has a bit of an arc too.
I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's a great character. He's one of my favorites.
Yeah, he's a great character. He again, he's another character that if you see a still of him, he kind of looks like he's wearing a turtle hat. His helmet is
I
just goofy,
think that every
right?
time. I
Yeah.
assume it's turtle hat.
Yeah, but as soon as you like start to see him in the shows, you're like, well, wait a minute, this character is kind of awesome.
Yeah, he's a really good character, and he's
as
360
the series,
character
yeah,
too.
As the series progresses, you're not only like looking forward to seeing him, you kind of root for him.
That's the thing with I guess I would say this about the Clone Wars. So often someone recommends a show and they're like, it's really great. You just gotta get past that first season where they're really figuring things out.
Sure.
You know, you hear that with
Sure.
Buffy and Babylon 5 and etc.
Yeah, right.
But I think honestly, it's so hard because I'm biased now. I feel like they pretty much kind of get off the ground running pretty well.
Yeah, I think
And
so.
it takes a few episodes maybe before you hit that real dramatic moment
Right.
where you realize
Right.
the depth of the show.
Well, so there's two other characters that I want to touch on that are new characters. One is a big one,
Mhm.
Cad Bane.
Ah, yes.
Cad Bane is our bounty hunter.
And that was a big sticking point for me too, because when he first came on the scene, I did not like Cad Bane.
Yeah, Cad
at
Bane,
all.
I didn't necessarily like him either, and because of his look.
Yes, because I was like, this is not Star Wars.
He kind of wears a cowboy hat / sombrero,
Yeah.
and I saw that
Can't
and I
think
was
of what
like,
that be called.
that's not Star Wars.
And he's very much a Clint Eastwood kind of analog.
Oh, he's definitely
bounty
a
hunter.
Clint Eastwood analog.
If Hondo is kind of the best space pirate, he's supposed to be like the best bounty hunter.
Yes.
So this is like your proto Boba.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So.
So, I think, again, the thing that really kind of made me like him was not only the fact that he is a pretty cool character.
Yeah.
But also,
And he gets great. Yeah.
he is a tie back to the original trilogy.
I had watched 3 seasons of this, and this was a big sticking point for me. I was like, I like them all pretty much, but Cad Bane, where does he come from? It doesn't seem Star Wars to me. And I was talking to you about it.
Right. He is, his races, he's a Duros. And we've actually seen Duros in the Cantina. So this is a throwback to, the original Creature Cantina. There's 2 characters in there. They have green. They look almost like the typical alien cliche.
Mm-hmm.
They have big green heads and red eyes.
Well, they're blue.
Yeah,
They're-
greenish blue.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
But they're
In the cantina, they look more green
yeah,
than blue, but yeah.
they're in the cantina, and Cad Bane, obviously they've taken some liberties and made his head a little bit smaller. I think.
Yeah.
Put a sombrero type of hat on him and give him a Clint Eastwood accent, and you don't. He also has some kind of breathing apparatus too. I think.
Yeah, there is like some tubes or something.
Yeah.
Because that's what evil people get in the Star Wars universe.
Right. All the bad guys, they just can't breathe anymore.
As I go back to this EU stuff, and I go through and find out all these previous Sith Lords, it was initially annoying, and eventually I was like on board with it. That eventually every Sith Lord gets a breathing apparatus.
Sure.
You just
Right.
have to get it.
Yeah, right. So then the final character that I think we need to bring up, which is a very, very important part of the Clone Wars, is not just one character, but it's the clones themselves.
Yes, that's massive.
A stroke of genius.
Yeah.
Stroke of genius by giving these masked soldiers, who are actually clones of one another, or clones of
Jango
Fett,
Fett.
actually giving them personalities and individualities and names, and they're basically stormtroopers of the original trilogy, except you actually care for them when they die.
And there's 2 other extra things about this too that, like, number one, that's one of the major criticisms of the prequels. Is that, like, there's no all those giant battles mean nothing because it's robots versus clones, and you don't know any of the clones, so
Right.
who cares? It might as
Right.
well be robots versus robots.
Right.
But this does a big job to rectify that. But you gotta realize that there's a big danger in even broaching this. And I thought it was pretty brave of the show to actually go that route and not treat them like they were just robots that could be shot with lasers, and that's fine. Like, they actually give them personalities, because then that starts asking questions about slavery and human rights. And
which is what the Clone Wars does.
yes.
It gets into these kind of deeper topics.
Straight up.
As a kid's cartoon that people are reluctant to watch because it's a kid's cartoon. It kind of gets into deeper topics than Star Wars itself. Which some will say is not Star Wars.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very good point. Like, someone would be like, well, that's not what I watched Star Wars for.
Right. But that is kind of Star Wars. Star Wars is, the Force is about spirituality and...
Well, and there's so much deep stuff in Star Wars.
Sure.
I mean, in the original trilogy, even going back. I mean, it's more than just a romp. The reason we all identify with it is because it's been said a million times before. We've all been that kid that's in Tatooine, just staring off at the twin moons or whatever, twin suns.
Sure.
So.
And I think that, the brilliance of Clone Wars is it introduces these topics to the Star Wars world, and it makes you start to think about, well, what were the stormtroopers in the original trilogy? Were they clones? Were they real people? What happened? And there's stories to tell between the two sagas, or the two trilogies.
Here's what shocks me the most, is that it was a show that was willing to go in to the plot of the prequels and get its hands dirty and really address all those questions that the EU barely even touches on. Like, they start touching on the concept of slavery and droids and what that means.
Yeah.
And the EU kind of always sort of dances around. They start to touch it, and they don't. And granted, there's a vast amount of the EU I haven't read yet, so that might come up yet.
Right.
But I thought that was very impressive that they were willing to get their hands so dirty with it, and that it's I kind of lost my train of thought.
No,
Continue
that's fine.
Yeah.
So, I would say if you are willing to get into the Clone Wars, be prepared to. If you watch all of it, you'll have new characters that will probably enter into your top 5, your top 10 Star Wars characters of all time.
Yeah.
Up there with your Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, and Princess Leia. You'll have Ahsoka Tano, because she is that strong of a character.
I mean, she definitely cracks my top 10, if not my top 5.
Yeah. You'll have Asajj Ventress. You'll have Ahsoka, Hondo Onaka. You'll have the clones. You'll actually know, Rex and Cody by name, and you'll actually know them by what their armor looks like, and that helps when you get to Revenge of the Sith and Order 66, when the clones are ordered to turn on the Jedi.
And you actually know these Jedi too.
Yeah, you know the Jedi too.
That's the other thing.
That's the other thing. So
you get to know all these characters.
It builds depth for. Well, it creates depth for all these new characters, and then it builds depth for all of the existing characters that were introduced in the prequels. So you get Anakin more fleshed out. You get Obi-Wan, who kind of has a past love story. You get
very controversial.
Very controversial. You get more fleshed out Padme, a more fleshed out Yoda. By the end of the series, you have Yoda who's kind of questioning the Force.
That's something else about the show. When it starts after the movie, isn't the first arc a Yoda arc, like a Yoda story? Which took me off guard. I was like, oh, I'm watching this episode where none of the main characters really even show up, and it's just Yoda on an adventure.
Right.
And that's when it really hooked me, because I realized, and I guess I should have said this earlier, I realized that it's more of a roving camera through the Star Wars universe.
Yes.
Like, it's not the adventures of Anakin.
No,
it's
not
the adventures
at all.
of
not at all.
the Star Wars
It's
universe.
The Clone
it's
Wars.
the Clone Wars.
It's the Clone Wars.
Every pivotal
they
thing.
It's a camera that can kind of focus on one area, then move out, focus on another area. And in fact, because of George Lucas and the way his mind thinks, it's not really, in the order that the episodes came out, is not actually chronological.
Now, that's something I want to come right back to in a second. But I just remembered what I was going to say earlier. So the cool thing about it is, it's a show's not afraid to get his hands dirty and really get into the plot and figure out these heavy things that George Lucas brought up. But it also never gets didactic. It never becomes Star Trek. It always stays
it's
Star
always
Wars.
Star Wars.
And
Yes.
and I can say that with some knowledge. I'm a massive Star Trek fan. But this does not. It doesn't ever go that route.
Right.
We're never getting to a point where we're talking about, naming specific parts of machines and this and that.
Right. The other thing that's
always
great
about
about it is about character, and it's about. It also isn't afraid to question things.
Yeah, like the Jedi.
The Jedi.
As a concept.
By as a concept, you're kind of questioning if the Jedi are actually doing good.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they in the war? They're peacekeepers. Why are they generals in a war? Why were they,
Which comes back though. These are seeds that were sown by George Lucas in the films.
Absolutely.
And these are the two films that were post 9/11. This is like we started to touch on last time.
Sure.
This was kind of that critique I've talked about, that some people do see this as if America's supposed to be a peacekeeper, why are we getting in these wars?
Right.
So
right.
just throwing that out there.
No, but it totally touches upon all of this. You start to question the Jedi. You start to question the
nature,
the government.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You're questioning the government. Padme
Of
starts
Alderaan.
to question whether they should be fighting in this war or not. The whole idea of this war, they tried to figure out why are they fighting.
Also, actually, I mean, it's almost embarrassing to admit now, and easy to forget. But when I started watching the Clone Wars, I didn't really have a clear concept of how it all worked.
Oh right, yeah.
I wasn't actually, it's hard to look back on because now it feels so clear. But I didn't really understand that. At a very simple level, it's it's an actual civil war, and one side has robots and one side has clones.
Right. Yeah,
that's
all it really is. But what are they fighting for?
Yeah, and it's all this. It's all being manipulated by this one politician.
It's being manipulated. It's not really a war for anything.
And I feel like that's a silly thing to say, in 2014. But I feel like even going, maybe it still is. Maybe people are still confused about that or not. I don't know. But in 2010, I feel like everyone was still confused.
Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah.
So
yeah.
Now I want to pretty soon here. We have some lists and stuff we want to start going through and start really talking in depth.
Sure.
Put up the spoiler
absolutely.
alert.
Okay, so we haven't
close
really discussed how we're handling spoilers on the show, on this podcast. But, folks, we don't want to be like the rest of other Star Wars podcasts out there. We're kind of more, I guess, we're loose in our conversation, we're more free form. So, spoilers are going to come out.
Yeah.
We apologize in advance. If you're listening to us, know that we're not always going to probably be giving spoiler alert.
We'll do our best, but it's not the thrust of this show. This is two guys hanging out, talking Star Wars.
Not talking about pretty much anything other than Star Wars and its vast influences.
Yeah.
So anyway, you want to go into some of the take a little bit deeper dive into what the Clone Wars are?
Let's get right into this.
All
right. Spoiler alert is up.
All right.
So, how do you want to do this? Do you want to go positive, negative? So we can do favorite elements and least favorite elements?
Do your favorite elements.
Okay.
I'll throw out some of mine.
All right. My favorite elements, and these were almost all elements that I, when introduced, thought this is dumb.
Sure.
And very quickly was turned 180 degrees on, which was my favorite thing about the show.
All right.
Number one, dark sabers.
Dark sabers. Black
lightsabers. Negative lightsabers.
Yeah.
Such a childish, stupid idea.
Yeah.
On the surface.
Yeah. No, but they're awesome.
They're fantastic. And they are just a really great effect. And that's when they start introducing those. That's really when they start figuring out how to really film lightsaber battles.
Right.
That are as theatrical and crazy as prequels, but not as why would you do that?
Right.
They all had a purpose.
They all had a purpose.
All lightsaber battles in Clone Wars I felt were very well done.
Oh, they were
had a lot of
extremely
emotion,
well done.
So.
Yeah. Not only were the dark sabers, is that what they're called?
I'm calling them dark sabers. I don't know if
I think that's what they are. Dark sabers.
Yeah.
Not only are they cool, they're very well done.
Mm-hmm.
They're also basically they're lightsabers for Mandalore.
And I like the fact that they're in that way. They're also kind of like presented as they're cool and they're powerful, but they're kind of subpar technology. Like I don't feel like a Darksaber is going to last more than 25 years.
Yeah, I kind of feel like
there's something like there's a power source, but it's not the Force.
Yeah, I feel like I have to rewatch it. But do they extend lightsabers, or are they like swords that are kind of electrified?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, so there you go.
But they're cool.
Yeah, they're badass.
They're cool.
Second, Tarkin.
Tarkin's cool.
When Tarkin shows up, and because Tarkin is such an easy element to throw in to give some legitimacy to something. Like the EU does it
right,
left and right.
Right.
Well, back when Tarkin was here.
Right.
But they did him really well, and they just presented him as just a great.
Well, that's the thing about the Clone Wars and the prequels. I guess the prequels didn't handle this as well as the Clone Wars, but like the good guys it's the precursor to the Empire. Like the good guys in the Clone Wars are the bad guys.
Yeah,
so,
empire building. Yeah,
right. Anakin is on. Anakin and Obi-Wan are on Star Destroyers.
Yeah.
Like that's such a weird juxtaposition. If you're an old trilogy fan, to be like, well, wait, why are the good guys fighting alongside the stormtroopers?
Yeah, actually, when I think back on it, was Mon Mothma a separatist?
Well, basically
in the show, did she go separatist?
So if we're basing this on starting with episode 1 and going all the way through if we go in chronological order,
as the release.
As the story progresses. So
like you've been watching on Netflix.
Phantom Menace, right?
Yeah.
Attack of the Clones, Clone Wars, Revenge of the Sith.
Yep.
A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. Right?
Yep. Because that is the canon.
Right. You're kind of rooting for the bad guys by the time you get to A New Hope.
That is what's really
the rebellion, the rebels.
Yeah.
Rebels typically are the bad guys.
Yeah, because I guess that's an interesting thing that we'll find out down the road with Rebels. Is how that transition happened from separatist to rebel.
Right, which will be
and also because keep in mind that the separatists were led by Count Dooku, and they counted amongst them.
That's the other thing is what makes the Clone Wars so brilliant is like was Dooku a bad guy?
Exactly.
I don't know.
Ugh, God. And
I guess
There's so many things that I want to say, but I'm reserving for when we eventually talk about the EU because, as you've said many times, the EU is R&D for what becomes the Clone Wars. And everything coming forward.
All right, go on.
Anyhow.
Go on.
Okay. Other favorite elements: Black Sun.
Black Sun is great.
Black Sun was badass because it did a big thing for me, which has been a sticking point since I was probably 11 or 12, and that was it somewhat legitimized the Shadows of the Empire.
Well, here's the thing with the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars started, I'm not entirely sure the year. Again, we don't do the research, folks. But it started before there was an announcement that
2007,
maybe
somewhere
years ago. But it was a long time. It was way before they announced that Disney bought Star Wars and that there was going to be more episodes and there was going to be more movies every year, and so we had this man, Dave Filoni, who is basically the executive producer of the Clone Wars. The Hat, as we like to call him. He watch him in interviews, folks. He's always wearing a cowboy hat or a skull cap of some sort. I don't know why. I'm guessing that the guy has lush, beautiful locks, but
you gotta assume.
Yeah. But he was creating this show before there was any announcement of what's canon and what's not.
And also probably at the nadir of the point where people gave a shit about
Sure.
Star Wars.
Right. So I think I give him credit for single-handedly bringing elements of the EU, dragging them out of the EU and making them canon.
And once again, it's just so amazing. The Clone Wars is canon.
Yeah.
It's so great.
Yeah.
But
so
it was funny. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Just by nature of my work, I have a lot of time to listen to podcasts while I work. And so many take on the point of well, I don't care if it's canon or not. I just like a good story. And
Right.
it's like, well, of course,
Right.
we all like a good story. But if that's true, why aren't we all trolling for fan fiction?
Right.
Because it's not legitimate.
Right.
It's not real.
Exactly.
Come on. Canon actually...
We want it to count.
Yeah, canon... It's not that canon makes something good or bad. It's that canon just makes things fun.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, I know this story counts.
Yeah,
it's
it
part
counts.
of this thing. And I know it's a fanboy mentality, but, like, guess what? I'm a, like, almost 30-year-old man talking about Star Wars. Like, this is what it is, guys. This is fanboy world.
Yeah, almost 30. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. You do the math, folks. All right, so go on. Dark Sun.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, other good elements. Actually, I just have written down Ventress and Ahsoka.
Okay.
'Cause they're
All right.
massive.
All right.
Do you want to throw in a few? Good
Yeah, I'll throw in
favorite
some good
moments?
ones. Boba Fett.
Wow,
Boba
okay.
Fett's relationship to Aura Singh.
Now, Aura Singh I would put down as an element. Boba Fett, I was very happy with everything that happened with Boba Fett, but I was like, I expect there to be a due diligence with Boba Fett, so I was...
But they handled it well.
They handled it very well.
well.
I mean, spoilers are up, so the fact that he does not get into the Boba Fett costume
He
by the
does
end
not
of
get
it
into the Boba Fett costume.
was awesome. What an awesome source of restraint, because they could have sold yet another Boba Fett action figure, and they chose not to.
Right,
So,
right.
impressive.
So, certain things that I...
Least liked?
Well, no, I still have to throw in some likes.
Oh, okay.
The ending. The ending, so folks, it had two endings, really. In my opinion, it had two endings.
100%.
It had
And
the
I feel
ending.
Like one of those endings was a little stronger than the other.
It had the season 5 ending where it basically ended Ahsoka Tano's arc.
Spoilers for sure.
Spoilers for sure right now. Her
change
ending, she gets framed for a crime that she didn't commit and leaves the Jedi Order.
In one of the most dazzling animation segments of the entire series.
Yeah.
Like her fugitive run was beautiful.
It was
great.
It was beautiful.
And
most of her story arcs were incredible.
the visual symbolism at the end between her and Anakin's
Well, that's the
goodbye,
thing. So
that's the best.
one of the probably my favorite part of the entire Clone Wars series is the last 2 words that Ahsoka Tano says to Anakin when he says that, yeah, I'm not entirely sure about the Jedis either, and she's like, I know. Like, she knows that she's walking away, being forced out of the Jedi Order.
Mm-hmm.
She knows that Anakin isn't
Anakin
feeling it
has
either.
Anakin his background is this gigantic citadel, this gigantic Coruscant mechanical citadel thing, this machine, and her background is just sky.
Yeah.
And it's just it says it all right there.
It was beautiful.
And also, for the record, that's how you do a callback.
That is how you do.
know?
Well,
You know?
that's true, because you know what?
I
Until
love
you said it,
I know. Yeah.
until you said it, I didn't even realize that was a
That's
callback.
a beautiful dovetail. That's not retroactively sticking in a no.
And
so
that
you go
is
back, no.
that is actually the beauty of the Clone Wars, is the fact that, all right, the first season, I think there was a mandate of every episode has to say, I have a bad feeling about this, right?
Yes.
And they said it.
That is the curse of the Star Wars.
It is kind of the curse of the Star Wars universe.
It's so inappropriately used all the time.
Always. But the beauty of the Clone Wars is...
And that goes back to the OT. The original trilogy was also misusing it by the end.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
Right.
anyhow, sorry.
But the beauty of it is they started throwing in other callbacks to other lines of dialogue all over the place that you never even picked up on.
But so subtle.
So subtle.
And and with the points where they weren't subtle, they were fantastic.
Yeah.
There was my favorite non-subtle callback is Anakin. I can't remember who he sees, but sees someone do something.
Yeah.
He goes, "Impressive, most impressive."
Yeah, right.
Like just really laid back.
Right. And I think my favorite was Ahsoka Tano. Like they're flying into battle, and the space battles in the Clone Wars are awesome.
Yeah. Oh God.
And
yeah.
she's like,
Battlestar Galactica.
yeah, and she's like, here's where the fun begins. And I'm like, oh man, that's so
wow.
that's
I never
beautiful.
picked up on that one.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
So I would say just put that down as callbacks.
Callbacks are awesome. Yeah.
Fantastic.
All right. So, all right, let's get into the things we don't like.
Because we're trying really hard to keep this podcast very positive.
Yeah.
But you know what? We would be a liar if we didn't have some negatives.
Yeah. It's, as we said, there's a lot of episodes in the Clone Wars. Not all of them are great.
This first one is going to be a sticking point between you and I.
Yeah.
Wookiees.
Okay.
And now there was a big hubbub. This is season 4 or
Season
5?
4 or 5. 4.
There's a big hubbub that they're going to finally have Wookiees on because they couldn't do it before animation-wise. They just couldn't make the hair work.
Yeah, right.
But so when they finally came, and that was one of the moments where I was not into it. I do need to rewatch the arc.
Okay.
There were things I did like about the arc. There were things that happened I dug. But it was just having Chewbacca on the show, I was like, we don't need this.
Yeah, I like Chewbacca on the show.
Yeah.
I was okay with it.
It was
I was okay with it.
It was just one of those moments, just like at the end of Revenge of the Sith. Was it Revenge of the Sith? Where Yoda would see Chewbacca.
Yeah.
And Yoda's all like high-fiving him. And then like you go to Empire and he's like, yeah, your friends? Yeah, even my old friend, Chewbacca? Fuck him.
Right. I got news for you. I think we're going to see Chewbacca in Rebels.
Oh, yeah. And I would expect to see him in
they're saying that Wookiees are going to be a big part of Rebels.
Well, slavery, right?
Yeah.
They're going to bring that.
They're going to do the whole Wookiees were slaves and they were at the spice mines of Kessel.
What if they didn't do the Wookiees were slaves? Because that's only an EU thing, right? That's not referenced.
Yeah, I guess that's not really referenced.
Other than they don't like to be chained up or whatever Han says. They don't like to be.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was never actually said in the. Well, I guess it wasn't ever said in the movies that Chewbacca has a life debt to Han Solo. That was always just.
Why do we know that?
I think that was probably maybe those first Han Solo novels that came out really early on.
Really really good ones. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think.
I guess I heard all Han Solos are good. I haven't listened.
Yeah, it was. I think it was pretty early on that we learned, not through the movies, that Han was in the Imperial Navy, and that he got out because he saw the way that the Wookiees were being treated as slaves, and he freed Chewbacca.
That's just really good.
Yeah, it's a good story. It's a good story. Yeah, we'll get to that later about what the EU has in it that should be canon and what shouldn't. But that's another episode further down the line.
And that might be years away yet. We have a lot of EU to get.
All right, so if you're gonna throw out Chewbacca as a bad thing in the Clone Wars, I'm gonna throw this out right now. Admiral Akbar and that whole story arc where there's a war on the Mon Cali.
Mon Calamar.
I think they
they
dropped the
rid of it.
Calamar.
They don't
It's Mon Cali now, so you're not actually thinking about appetizers. But there was a long story arc there where it was just this war underwater, and there was the shark villain who was really, talk about a bad callback to Jaws. The villain. The villain is a call. Yeah, I mean, it's brutal.
That was a low point. You're right.
There was some low points. I think that overall, a low point in the show is sometimes the story arcs are a little long. For the first couple seasons, the story arcs were 3 episodes long, so that would be 23-minute shows or so. Towards the middle to the end of the show, the story arcs are now 4 episodes long.
When you get to a 4-episode,
it gets rough. It gets rough, especially when it's a story arc that you don't really care for.
Yeah, even some of the good long ones though. By the 3rd one, I'm getting tired.
Yeah,
by the last one, it redeems itself.
Yeah. They drag a little bit. I would say one of those story arcs is the droids. Not.
Also, to be fair, I do give them a lot of props for having multi-episode arcs, even on a kids show.
Yeah, right.
They literally
they went for that. Yeah.
Kids and adults to watch for a month.
Yeah.
That's kind of awesome.
The droids. I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of any arcs that involved the droids.
The more I look back on it, the more I actually like some of those arcs.
Some of them, I mean, the ones with that was just R2 and C3PO, they were goofy. I mean, there was definitely a Gulliver's Travels
Oh, that one, yeah.
type storyline in there.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
But there was
You know,
there was a
those
long story arc.
Let's hold off on the specific episode
Okay.
arcs. So
All right.
we
Yeah,
have
we'll
that.
get to
Let's
those
keep
later.
it elements. And you want me to go again?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yoda's Priestess Planet. This is like you're at the finale.
Oh,
of
you
the
didn't
whole
like
series.
that?
Here was my problem.
Okay.
And we're talking about the very, very finale, the Netflix Lost Episodes finale arc.
Yeah.
Yoda's arc. Almost universally loved. To me, I felt like the show was borderline flawless, and then that arc, I was like, it's a weird way to end. To be fair, it wasn't originally conceived as the ending. It works good enough as an ending. And my only issue is, so Yoda flies off to investigate this disturbance.
Yes.
And he goes
in
to
his
Dagobah.
Yoda-sized spaceship,
Yeah, it's
which
very
I thought
cute.
was awesome.
It's very cute. I love it.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I love pretty much everything about Yoda in this show. So then he goes to Dagobah, goes to the evil cave. There's an explanation for why the cave's evil. I can't remember it, but he goes to the evil cave, does all that stuff. Qui-Gon appears, and then he has to jump off and go to another planet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this planet's like at the center of the universe, is where the Big Bang kind of started in the Star Wars universe, and there's a bunch of Force energy there. And he gets there, and there's these priestesses.
Yes.
And like they have kind of drama mask faces, happy, sad faces.
Yes.
One's got a quirky face. One's got there's like 4 of them, right? 4 or 5.
I think there's 5.
Yeah, 5, and they all have different kind of faces, but that drama mask style. And this was just one of those elements that, to me, unlike the Mortis arc, was just so. There's no rational explanation for this. What is priestesses doing in their downtime? What are they? I couldn't get on board.
Well, see, that's the thing is, I mean, I've only watched it once. I need to watch it again, but part of me was like, is this even real, or is this just Yoda imagining this? Like it's some kind of forced
that I was able to slip out
delusion.
of to be like, this show still rocks.
Yeah.
So it does if you're like me and you have that, like, because I hate to be a nitpicker. I think of myself as an optimist, but a lot of times I do nitpick on these things.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of how things are. So, thankfully, when Clone Wars presents you with something you want to nitpick on, it generally leads you a back door to.
Yeah, right.
Well, maybe it's just a dream.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. Like the droids episodes. Like they went off on these crazy ass adventures, and then they end up back where they left off, and nobody knew they were gone, even though they saved 3 planets from certain doom.
It's so stupid, and it's so Star Wars that I just love it. Like,
well, that's the thing is that's what's great about the Clone Wars. Again, is it tied in the droids cartoon.
And I feel like it
as a callback.
Yes, and I feel like it literally gave something for every segment of the audience.
Yes.
In every season.
Yes. Oh, well, so that's the thing is so the Clone Wars, the series, had typical Star Wars episodes, Star Wars storylines that we were familiar with.
Yeah.
But it also had homages to other stories that we, I said before, like it had this villain that was a shark, and that was an homage to Jaws, which wasn't great, but I get it. They were, doing an homage to, one of the best films ever made, Jaws. But there was homages to Hitchcock.
Oh yeah.
There was homages to
noir films.
Horror, noir, to comedy,
horror,
slapstick, like all the stuff that when you typically think of Star Wars in your very rigid mind frame, whether you're an old fan or a new fan, we all kind of have that, no, Star Wars is this and not that.
Yeah.
Clone Wars breaks this. And sometimes they flounder in breaking those rules, and sometimes they hit it, and you're like, well that kind of works. That works, yeah. More times than not, it works.
And I mean, the thing about that that's so cool is I think that in a post Tarantino world, a lot of people hear about homage to something, and they're like, oh my god, I'm so sick of it. But keep in mind, that is what those big legitimate film critics who saw Star Wars 1977, that's what got them talking about it so positively.
Yeah, right.
As these very learned film critics were sitting watching, like they would see the Kurosawa nods,
Right.
and they would see all these things, and the Joseph Campbell and everything, and they would realize and be like, oh, there's a lot of articulation behind these, and they appreciated like the intelligence that went into this.
Right.
And that is the same thing with the Clone Wars.
Right. Which I think, just projecting this into the future, is if we're going to move forward, George Lucas is not the director anymore. We're going to have a bunch of different storytellers giving their take on Star Wars. So we better get used to thinking outside the box of Star Wars is not just this. It can be expanded to, who's to say that we can't have, a Star Wars heist movie in the future, a Star Wars horror movie, a Star Wars comedy, a Star Wars... We're going to get a Star Wars buddy movie in the novels that are coming out between Darth Vader and the Emperor. That's going to be awesome.
2015.
2015, yeah. So, that's why I think you and I love the Clone Wars so much, is it opens up, it expands not only the physical universe of Star Wars. There's so many planets. They're not tied to just going to Tatooine anymore. They go to Fallon, and they go to the Rykor, and they go
Mandalore
to
was my favorite
Ryloth. Yeah, and Mandalore. Mandalore is this Picasso-esque.
Yeah, straight up Picasso.
Yeah. Another homage to Picasso in Star Wars.
Yeah.
You think to yourself, that can't work.
There is a straight up Guernica in the background of one scene,
and it all works
with a Boba Fett armor.
Right. So, we're coming up, almost time to go for this episode, I think.
Once again, I feel like we just scratched the surface.
I think we just scratched the surface. We didn't even talk about the Mandalores.
Oh.
We didn't talk about...
We didn't talk about space slugs.
Sabine.
We didn't talk about Mortis, which is initially what got me into the show.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the Geonosis
Jar Jar and C-3PO.
We didn't talk about how Jar Jar works.
Boba's gang.
Yeah, we didn't
by the way, who did we hear speak on this show finally?
Who did we hear
Bosk?
speak? Oh, Bosk speaks.
Like
we go to Bosk's planet.
Oh my god.
Yeah, we get more of
Boba's plot to kill Mace Windu to avenge his father.
We get more of Watto's species.
Slavery, number 99.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. There's so much to love about this show.
Oh, and by the way, 2 more words. Darth Maul?
Darth Maul comes back.
Holy shit.
Darth Maul comes back. And basically builds the crime empire single-handedly. Like, so awesome. Like, who'd have thought that that's how that works out?
Well, it's one of those things, too, that I think that we all thought, sort of, and we're all like, what are they going to do, give him mechanical legs? And they do.
And they do.
But they pull
And it works. It works.
And
so,
there's
folks,
been a lot written about that turn he takes where he does the full villain thing.
Yeah.
Where he kills that certain character.
Yeah, right.
And it's amazing.
It's amazing.
Sorry.
It's amazing.
Sorry.
It's an amazing show. Folks, if we haven't sold you yet,
don't tune in next time.
Yeah, we're just gonna keep going on this track. No, we're gonna talk about something else next time, but we will probably come back to the Clone Wars again and again because it renewed our faith in Star Wars. We're totally on board with whatever comes down the line in the future. We know that there's plenty of stuff coming down. We're very excited about Rebels. We're very excited about all these new directors entering into the Star Wars pool with their unique visions, and I think that Star Wars, the Clone Wars, really primed us for that.
Mm-hmm. And Gareth Edwards is coming up.
Yeah.
Who else has been signed on?
Ryan Johnson.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which is that's a big topic.
That's a big topic. Yeah, we'll get to that, folks.
Maybe next time we'll talk about what's coming forward.
Yeah, what are we going to talk about next time?
Yeah, maybe we should talk about...
We do need to talk about how the prequels don't suck.
That's true. Tune in next time, folks. Find out.
Yeah, tune in next time. All right, I guess we're done for today. Thanks for listening. JP, any final words?
Make money specials.
All right. All right, folks. May the Force be with you. Till next time, we're out of here.
It was a blockbuster summer. moving pictures got us through to September. They made a movie about me and you, and they made it half nude and half true. There was a blood-sucking summer. I spent half the time trying to get paid for my savior. Swishing through the city center, I did a couple favors for these guys that look like Tuscan Raiders.
More bullshit.
I would say somewhere between 0.5 and 2.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. See, it's funny 'cause I want to be a 0.5 guy. And there's something I just can't deny about it, that when I see anything, learning new about the Mandalorian armor and where it comes from, that I can't help but be a 7.5 to 9 guy. And I know it's in. You said it best just off mic. We were talking when someone described to you that the coolest armor to have would be to get like Boba Fett armor for like a cosplay thing, and you thought to yourself, poser.
Yeah, it's
That's-
like
I mean,
everyone's favorite armor. Okay, like I don't want that armor.
I mean, I agree. I no, cosplaying issues aside, I agree 100% from that range. But storyline wise, you're really not excited at all about the?
No, we got it. We got it in the prequels. We got Jango Fett. We saw Boba Fett.
Oh, come on.
We saw Jango, use his jetpack
and his pistol,
his twin pistols, and we got it in the Clone Wars.
Now,
like
Clone
we got
Wars
that.
Clone Wars. I mean, I thought the whole concept of how the Mandalorians worked and how suddenly I realized this faction was kind of a like, what if the Jedi were more militant and didn't have powers? Like that's what the Mandalorian thing is.
Right.
And I thought that was a very great storyline about how they were trying to turn their backs and actually embrace peace, whereas the Jedi were peacekeepers who were going into war. I thought that was a very interesting storyline.
Sure.
And then the whole thing collapses. You don't want to hear any more about that, or
Not really.
you don't want to learn more about Boba Fett?
But Boba Fett's not a Mandalore.
Well, true.
Yeah,
That's true.
he's not a Mandalore.
But he's got the
And here's the thing.
Death Watch insignia.
Yeah.
Death Watch.
Who cares? Like, why? Let him go. Let him go. Like, let him stay a mystery. Like,
Okay.
let's just let him stay a mystery.
All right.
Like I'd rather hear more about Bosk.
All right. Well, there you have it. Gen 1 fan, not so interested in Boba Fett. Gen 2 fan, wrapped with interest. All right. Anyhow, going forward, there's a new comic book out. Star Wars, Son of Dathomir.
Son of Dathomir, the last of the Clone Wars series in comic book form,
And the only canonified
first
Dark Horse output.
True.
Yeah.
The first thing we're really getting under the new. This is what's canon and nothing else is.
I thought that was a nice goodbye rose for Disney to throw to Dark Horse. Hey,
Yeah,
thanks
Dark
for
Horse.
your years of service.
Right.
Here you go.
Here you get one last series,
One
4
last big
books
selling.
done.
Everyone's gonna go buy it.
Yeah. So, we've read the first 2 issues.
We've read the first 2 issues, and we have the 3rd issue in the room with us, though neither of us have had a chance to read it.
Right.
Just
So
had to look
basically,
through it.
it's continuing, giving Darth Maul, I assume, an end. I don't know.
No, we'll see.
We'll
we
see.
have.
He's
2 more
continuing
issues,
on,
yeah.
and he's going after Dooku.
We last saw him. Spoiler alert. We last saw him being in his brother Savage Opress. Had been
Savage was killed by the Emperor.
killed by the Emperor,
Palpatine.
and he was now in the Emperor's clutches and saying, "I have better plans for you."
Oh,
something along
right.
those
Yes, he was
lines.
captured.
Mhm.
And somehow he escapes in the first issue.
Yes.
And
I'm
he wants to
vague
go
on how
after
that happened.
Right. Well, I think his brother was involved in the Mandalores.
No,
and-
the brother was involved. The Night Witches were involved.
Well, the Night Witches are involved too, because Dooku eventually.
Specifically,
That's
Mother Taliesin.
right.
Yes.
Mother Taliesin is
We didn't
really
talk about
Dooku's. No, we didn't. We didn't talk.
That's
about
actually
the
one of
Night
my
Witches
favorite
at all.
additions, also to Clone Wars.
It was a good addition, yeah.
Yeah.
But somehow Dooku wants to go. He's using Darth Maul to get to Mother Taliesin.
He gets his Mandalorian crew back together.
Yes.
Or maybe they're part of the thing that
I think
frees
they escape.
them
Yeah,
with the Black Sun team up.
See, there you go. There's
Okay,
the Star Wars heist.
Yeah, there it is.
Gotta get
A
the
classic
gotta
homage.
get the band back together.
And then here's the things I remember. Him kissing Mother Taliesin. That's all I have. The second issue is him and Mother Taliesin
Darth Maul kiss.
which I was just like, this is bizarre because Darth Maul's gay. So
He's not gay, but isn't
No?
Mother Taliesin his mom? It's
no, I mean, no. Well, I don't know how that actually
It's an
works. We
Oedipus
don't know
con.
where those little barbarian guys come from.
yeah, we don't know enough about them. See, I'd rather hear more about
And then they grow their
the Sons of
corpses.
Dathomir than I would about the Sons of Mandalore.
Well, I agree with you, but there'll always be a part of me that wants to know more about Mandalore. I mean, it was a third option. That's the thing. You have the Jedi, you have the Sith, and now suddenly there's a third option.
Which? The
Well-
Mandalores or the?
Well, actually,
you have four.
I was
options.
saying the Mandalores, but yeah, the four now.
Four
with the Night
options.
Sisters, yeah.
Night Sisters, yeah. Which, so that makes Darth Maul a Night Brother.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's a
Was
trumped
that
up
actually
Night Brother.
was that actually said in the Clone Wars that he's a Night Brother? He calls Savage
I feel-
Opress
Now that was the
a
thing.
brother.
When we first meet Savage, he has a brother who's also yellow. Remember?
Yeah, you got the
Who he's, like,
yellow
defending.
and black guys and the red and black guys.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah, and
the
I don't
tattoos.
actually know what happens when the Night Sisters over opium, where they like sit there and like give them the green gas and they
Yeah.
get the bit horns bigger and stuff.
Yeah, I don't
I
understand.
don't know what's going on there.
Yeah.
I like the idea though that the Night Sisters are somehow accessing another side of the dark side that we haven't encountered. I like that.
I think that
That's cool.
yeah, I think that has to be explored more if the movies are going to go forward.
I would
You
certainly.
can't just keep bringing up the Sith.
I would be incredibly shocked if they even touched out with a 10-foot pole in episode 7, though. This like idea that there's another magical aspect, the dark side, like, whew.
The darker side.
Yeah. Into the darker side by J.J. Abrams.
Magic. MAGIICG.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah. Anyhow, Night Sisters are great. So anyhow, bottom line, how's this series going for you so far? It was pretty. I think we were both pretty excited when we found out it was a continuation officially.
Yeah.
It was official canon.
It is official canon.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on how it ends. If it ends with like Darth Maul's finally dead, or like if there's a definitive ending to his
if Darth
story.
Maul dies, I'll be really disappointed. I think he needs to live.
See, I think that's what this is for, though. Is just to be like, okay, we're done with this.
Can you imagine what an undignified story arc, like meta story arc, that is for this character? How it starts out and he's the most trumped, like
His
thing
whole
with,
story
like on the way
arcs.
up to Phantom Menace, though. Like all those advertisements and stuff, like he's just like this amazing. Like we're all just like, who is that guy? He's gonna be so great. And he has
Then
this
he's
indignant death at the end.
Yeah.
And then like every story that's featured him since has like been somehow about like the indignity of being Darth Maul. And to the point where they finish his storyline, like not even in a movie or a TV show, but in a comic book.
Comic book.
Oh,
Okay.
it would be fitting. It would be fitting.
Better yet, he becomes part of the Archie world. Archie, Jughead, and Maul.
They just trade him off into the Archie line.
Yeah. There you go.
I mean-
Archie's new gay friend, Dorothy.
I didn't see where you were going with that initially. I like to believe that that's just an unspoken thing amongst all fans, that we just all, quietly know that Darth Maul's gay. Yeah. I mean, it's just,
Sure.
it's there.
He's kind of a eunuch, isn't he?
Yes. Yeah, that's very true. That's very.
Kind
You
of.
watch Game of Thrones?
I did watch a little bit of Game of Thrones.
Did you encounter the character of Varys?
Varys, yeah.
I guess he's kind of like
He's
a
like
more
a
athletic
dumb,
Varys.
yeah, kind of a dumber Varys.
Yeah, a dumber, more athletic, tattooed Varys. That's Darth Maul.
Who's a little bit more gay, too,
Yeah.
than Varys.
Yeah. All right, I think that's a good place to call it.
It is a good place.